Okay, so it's a common theme. This happens kind of to the best of us. How do you make your day suck less? How do you be more productive after a horrific or a bad night's rest, right? And so there's a lot of behaviors that we've noticed, both pharmaceutical, health habits that can kind of make sure that you get past this, right? And so you have to realize when these things happen, it's common, right? And the first piece is to acknowledge, hey, look, I slept poorly, had a bad night's rest. And then the second piece is to really just take action, right? And so when you have a bad night's rest, right, the first thing to do is you want to think about how to jumpstart your system, however that is, right? For some people, it is doing box breathing or fire breathing or using the Othership app to help them do a guided breathwork activity. That kind of helps up in terms of resetting your limbic system. It also helps up kind of getting your mind kind of mentally reset. Some people, as far as I know for myself, I like taking a 40-minute walk, 20 to 40-minute walk. I cut the workout out after a poor night's sleep. And then throughout the day, I do have the 10 to 15-minute naps, right? And so what I found is those naps are really powerful and also kind of bumping up your carb intake slightly throughout the day, right? So something that's kind of interesting on the pharmaceutical side is the concept of like a nappuccino, right? And so what it is for me personally, I take kind of something called ergoloid, caffeine, and theanine. And so I take that tab of caffeine, probably 100 milligrams to 200 or so, and the ergoloid, the theanine, and I take a small bit of modafinil, for example, 50 to 100 milligrams, take a 20-minute nap, and after that, you feel pretty refreshed, right? Because it takes some time for the caffeine and the hydrogen, ergoloid, and the modafinil to kick in, right? And so that is kind of a interesting hack. And then another kind of tidbit that I have been kind of experimenting off and on with is nicotine, right? Nicotine gum, and not, hey, smoking. No, no, we don't recommend that. Don't recommend kind of the intakes of that, but small 2 to 4 mg pieces like of gum, right? And it's really funny because like when people hear the word nicotine, it's kind of controversial in the sense that they think, oh, cigarettes, this is like horrifically bad. And if you have it like in a gum format, this is kind of an organic company that has like 2 mg, 4 mg, right? And so if you think about it, kind of a lot of the best rating for authors has been under the influence of nicotine for centuries, right? And so, I think it's not really kind of the aspect of smoking, right? But like the smaller doses, right? And so studies have shown over a few years that nicotine is a cognitive enhancer across coordination, vigilance, in terms of persistence, memory, and reaction time, right? And so it has have kind of significant benefits on motor abilities, attention, and memory. And so while caffeine lasts 5 to 6 hours when you have a terrible night, nicotine is 1 to 2 hours. And so you can use it a little later in the day without impacting the next night's rest. And so the big concern, it's like, okay, nicotine, like, what about addiction, right? And it does hit your dopamine receptors, but the speed that it hits it, really is a primary driver how addicting it can be. So when you smoke or vape, like it's super addictive, right? Because it's a huge and efficient way of delivering large amounts of nicotine in the brain. And so that's why it's super dangerous to do it right that way. And so it kind of sounds a little funny talking about it as it were, but you know, uh, the additives for cigarettes and vapes are really bad, right? And so, uh, there have been other studies that show that nicotine, it can be a potential treatment for Alzheimer's. And so, you know, getting aside from like the e-cigarettes and kind of the format, right? There are different modalities for getting kind of the nicotine in your system. So Lucy, I think, is probably the cleanest way to do it, right? Because it has a less amount of additives, right? And so that's really kind of one way to do it. Just little tidbits here. And so really start super small when you try it, 2 to 4 mg. Don't do it every day. But this is when you have kind of a horrific day of sleep. And that's, as far as I know, in my experience, it's been really helpful throughout the day. When I took it, so in my experience, like the nicotine gum, I've noticed that I'm far better in terms of being uh, crisp, in terms of speaking, also kind of having better recall and writing. My writing is a lot stronger, attention to detail, right? So the challenge is, huge caution. You can get addicted to nicotine in any form, right? And overdosing it like huge amounts, if it's the patches. the 21, 14, 7, like those aren't good, right? And so you really want to start super small on this, if at all, and give it a shot. But it it can be really potent in the large amount of dose. So to recap, nicotine refines kind of motor skills, heightens your ability to pay attention, short-term memory, and speeds up your reaction time. And it can also, what I've noticed as far as I know, reduce your appetite, right? With with caffeine. But remember, the challenge with nicotine is its addictive potential, right? And so it activates your mesolimbic dopamine system, and it's kind of like as aka like your pleasure pathway. And so, if you are taking large amounts, like 15 mgs to 20 mgs within seconds via like a cigarette, for example, your pleasure pathways light up like a Christmas tree, right? But if you're doing 2 to 4 mg over the course of 20 minutes, you shouldn't get a euphoric rush, but you should be able to get some of the benefits, right? But again, there are risks to trying something like this and downsides to it, but do it very small. Try it, very cautiously, and you can kind of see the benefits from it. Okay, and so basically, just to wrap up, as soon as you have a bad day, right, beyond kind of the walks, the breath work, the naps throughout the day, and kind of bumping up your carb intake, what you'll want to do is kind of set up for the next day. And so the easiest way to kind of do that is like start making investments, right? So for me, I do a sleep tracker. I have a Aura ring, and I also got this band from Amazon just to compete with it. And it's really there not to see like, hey, what is your readiness score? What is your REM or deep? Those are important. But what's most important is like, are you going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time, like a machine, right? There's a reason why some of the best athletes and professionals, right, and CEOs and entrepreneurs, like they're in bed before 9. It's super tough, right? And they wake up at 4 or 5 every day. And so another tidbit, hey, like try to minimize like the number of hours before bedtime when you are looking at your phone or a monitor, right? Because blue light kind of impedes your body's ability to kind of get into that sleep state. And obviously, turn down the temperature in your bedroom. And another kind of scientific hack is if you're continually having issues with sleep, you may want to talk to your doctor about IGF-1 levels. They start to decline at 35 years young. And so if your growth hormone production is low, right, you may need to get on a sort of therapeutic growth hormone peptide or a GH script to boost this, right, deficiency, so that you can adequately get into deep and REM sleep, right? Because deep sleep is good for memory consolidation, uh, deep's actually for muscle recovery and digestion, right? REM's for memory and consolidation, right? And so that that marker, the IGF-1, may be something you need to check if this is a recurring, uh, circumstance. So hopefully this was helpful. This is not for everyone, but this is kind of what has helped me in my kind of journey when I have days that are pretty bad with the sleep. And hopefully you can kind of learn something new and try something new with regard to making the best of days that have a bad night's sleep. Okay, so we want to end the video kind of on the data, right? Having gone to MIT and being a Stanford dropout, super skeptical of anything that people say in videos. And so we want to have the research data that backs this up, right? But also the anecdotal data from our client base. And what's really interesting about nicotine in particular, it is rare that nicotine gum, for example, can show addiction, right? Something super interesting about nicotine in general, it improves psychomotor performance. What the heck is that, right? So psychomotor performance is a connection, right, between cognitive functions and physical movement. You can think about it when you're playing an instrument like a piano with a guitar. It improves the ability to pick that up, for example, or learn the connection between the two, right? Dexterity. So another example is catching a ball in football or baseball and so forth. Very interesting, the benefits there. And when you look at kind of again, this is reaction time, right? The benefits there also with regard to vigilance, right? So alertness, right? It's kind of interesting. Some benefits with regard to, again, spatial attention. This is kind of interesting in terms of a counter, which shows that there may be an issue with regard to memory and metacognition, right? So maybe there is a benefit with regard to higher dosages, right, at a certain time. Interesting on the short-term memory, right? And there's kind of other pieces on the effects of like patches, right, on memory and so forth, right? This is kind of all inspired by effectively this individual. He is really good on sleep, and he kind of talked about, hey, like how do you make sure you don't sleep well? Then he kind of double clicks on the facets of what you can do to sleep better, right? So going in sunlight early morning, waking up consistently same time, bedtime, going to bed at the and waking up at the same time as well, and kind of avoiding that caffeine window, right? So making sure that you stop caffeine after 12 p.m., right? Making sure you wear blue light blockers at night if you're looking at a phone or an iPod or an iPad actually. And if you do wake up in the middle of the night, doing kind of some breath work, NSDR, yoga and SDR, right? Non-sleep deep breaths, super interesting protocol. And also the supplements. And beyond that, though, we can offer a genetic testing to kind of figure out if there is a methylation issue, right? So if there are any breaks in your DNA that cause you to have issues at risk for gut health, right? Any kind of upper gut issues, so heartburn, any kind of issues from an anxiety, ADHD, right, standpoint. And we can kind of talk about the methylation piece, right? And then this was obviously inspired by this individual talking about what to do, right? So hopefully this was helpful, right? We want you to kind of make sure that you can be experimental in finding alternative therapies, but at the same time, we want to make sure you can make the best of your days and staying consistent. All right. Talk to you soon.